Continue watching the chaos unfold at the Capitol building. We do now have Representative Bera, Democrat of California, on the phone. Representative, thank you for taking the time here on the day. Where are you now, and what are you seeing?
I'm in a safe location. We're just watching what you're watching on television, and unfortunately, this is a sad day for our country and our democracy, and this has to stop.
Of some of your fellow congressional members?
I am staying in a safe location. I think all of our members are trying to stay safe along with the staff and so forth. I'm glad to see increased law enforcement. And I would hope the National Guard's out here and we can start to clear this. I would hope the protesters disperse peacefully. And then we have to get back to the business of the Constitution and our democracy. So, this is what happens when you have a president who is out there and flouts the rule of law, fans conspiracy theories and so forth. This is not the United States of America that I believe in.
Representative, how surprised are you at the fact that Capitol Police, D.C. police were unprepared for something like this, given exactly what you've mentioned with President Trump, who has been very vocal, telling his pro-Trump base to do something similar to this and essentially inciting it?
Very, very surprised at the lack of preparation, and that's certainly, once this incident is over, we'll have to go back and look at that. Obviously, with the inauguration of President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris on January 20th, hopefully this creates that urgency of preparation. But the country is seeing, the danger of this Trump presidency, and hopefully it wakes everyone up, and hopefully it wakes up some of my Republican colleagues who are trying to disrupt this peaceful transfer of power today as we certify this election. Look, I didn't like the outcome of the 2016 election, but it was an election, and we lost in 2016. We certified the election. Let's start to heal this country.
We do know that the Washington, D.C. National Guard has been mobilized to provide support to federal law enforcement. That coming from a Pentagon spokesman. That is a shift from what we saw just about an hour and a half ago, where some of the requests from Mayor Muriel Bowser in D.C. were denied to have this increased enforcement. And so what are you going to be watching when it comes to the increased enforcement presence as we go towards this curfew that is just outside of 2 hours away?
With the curfew coming up at 6 p.m., with the National Guard coming out, again, I would urge peaceful protest is fine, but at this juncture, this is no longer peaceful. People need to disperse. People need to understand that we just had an election. There'll be another election in 2 years and 4 years. And, if we want to be this democracy that stands up for the rest of the world, we have to demonstrate it. And this is, our enemies, China, Russia, this is bad. And, the world is seeing a democracy that's fragile.
We're just looking at images right now from Capitol Hill. We do know that, and as our viewers are seeing this on the bottom of their screens, that an explosive device has been found at a Republican Party headquarters and detonated safely, that according to the New York Times. We've also seen reports of the Georgia Secretary of State, who has now been put in protective measures as well to ensure that this figure, Brad Raffensperger, is not placed at risk similarly, because we do know that he has faced pressure as well to overturn the state's election results by the president himself. And so for a president that has created this, what can the president do right now, as there's only one president at a time, as President-elect Joe Biden has continued to say? What should and could President Trump say right now, whether that be more vocally via Twitter and I think more in person, as he made an in-person appearance perhaps earlier this day, where we saw him make an in-person appearance? Would you expect President Trump to come out to his base that is now, as we're watching these images, taking over the U.S. Capitol building, at the front of the building, and many of them being escorted out after penetrating the very barricades and safety measures that have been put in place?
I mean, it's going to be too much to ask for President Trump to be presidential for once in his life. Any other president would go to the podium, to the White House briefing room, and would address the protests and address the country and tell everyone to back down, that he had lost this election and let the Constitution play out. I don't expect to see that from President Trump. He is acting cowardice right now, and I don't see that leadership coming from President Trump anytime soon. We haven't seen it for, since the November 3rd election, if we ever saw it prior to that. But do I expect him to do that? No. He ought to do it. He ought to send a tweet out. He ought to tell everyone to step back and peacefully disperse. I don't expect to see that out of this president.
We do have a joint statement now coming in via Twitter from the account of Speaker Pelosi, and it's a joint statement with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, calling on President Trump to demand that all protesters leave the U.S. Capitol and Capitol grounds immediately. The joint statement is something that we've seen continuously, these statements over Twitter from elected officials or spokespeople for certain offices, Kayleigh McEnany being vocal via Twitter once again. We do know that we've just gotten another update that Maryland is sending state troopers and rapid response force from the National Guard to support law enforcement in Washington, D.C. That from the governor of Maryland on Twitter. And so even with these measures, you now still have Republican senators and House members that some of them have been more vocal than others. However, we did see a round of applause when challenging the election results, and largely from the Republican Party. And so with that in mind, what voice should they also have in condemning the inaction from President Trump?
Any member of Congress who's an elected leader has to look at the images that are and what's taking place here in Washington, D.C. aghast. This is the United States of America. This is the nation's capital and our Capitol building. And this is what anarchy looks like. For any Republican to stay silent is, ridiculous. We have to condemn these actions. And I would hope this is a wake-up call for some of my Republican colleagues to say enough's enough. We've had an election. There's a clear winner. The states have certified those elections. Let's stop the shenanigans. This is what happens when you play with fire.
How do you believe this is going to change the security protocols that are put in place, especially around events like today, a routine event by any other election year? However, today was different because of the outgoing president.
Yeah, I think, this has to be a wake-up call because, again, there are enemies of the United States who are watching this. And, we're constantly under threat. The Capitol Police do a wonderful job trying to protect us, but obviously they were not prepared for what happened today. We've never seen this in the United States, something of this magnitude. And, this is what happens when you have a president like President Trump who pours gasoline on, the fire. He's the arsonist in chief here.
By definition, would members of the House, members of the Senate, would they classify this as domestic terrorism?
It's definitely lawlessness. They're on federal property. They're destroying federal property. I suspect, when you look at, certain groups that potentially are out there that, they are inciting anarchy right now. And unfortunately, you have a president of the United States who incited it with his comments earlier today at that rally.
Representative Bera, we thank you for the time. Bera of California joining us via the phone here